Let's see what the polls pulled in for the new video. See what's going on with that. And the winner is... What is going on, my fellow nerds? OperatorOtter here, and today we are going to discuss what may be the pinnacle of in-depth mechanic interactions within Diablo 4, Attack Speed Breakpoints. Now, though this mechanic isn't hard to understand by any means via the base concept, the deeper we go down the rabbit hole, the more convoluted this becomes, and in this video, I am not going to hold back any punches. I will try my absolute best to simplify the concepts behind Attack Speed Breakpoints, but even so, there will be points in this video where the general audience will no doubt have give or take the following reaction of said bunny. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing we need to do is redefine our understanding of how the game functions in terms of animation rendering. Any video game is not a continuous flow of information. It receives, sends, and renders information in segments known as frames. Now, I'm sure most of you are aware of what frames are, as when you play on your device, when your frames per second are higher, the smoother your game appears. And this is because the more frames are shown within that second, the more your brain registers this flow of photos as continuous movement. But if it has less frames per second, then it appears more choppy. This concept is how the game operates not only in graphics you are seeing, but also the information that the game is receiving and sending. Now, the thing is, no matter how advanced your PC may or may not be, Diablo 4's server tick rate cannot be modified as it is dictated by the servers, not your PC. This is different than something like graphical frames per second, with which your graphics card is doing something completely different. With that said, Diablo 4's server refresh tick rate is 60 frames per second, and everything is based on this. So what we're going to do is convert our known understanding of seconds to frames. As we can see by this chart, each frame equals 0.01666 seconds. And if we were to take this value and multiply it by 60, we would get 1 second. If we have 30 frames, this is equivalent to half a second. Why? Well, if the game is functioning off 60 frames in 1 second, and 30 frames is half of 60, then what is half of 1 second? Well, half a second. Therefore, what we can derive from this chart is a conversion table of frames to time in seconds. Now what we are going to do is apply this understanding of frames to seconds to a concept I call the frame rounding rule. To simplify this, we are going to use a weapon that has 1 attacks per second roll, like a two-handed sword. This means that at its base value, each of your normal attacks are rendered at 60 frame mark as seen here. Now as we gain attack speed, this 60 frame amount will be reduced to be some other value. To figure out what this value is, we first need to figure out how many seconds it takes to perform the attack if it was buffed by 2% attack speed. We do this by using the following equation. Base time of attack divided by 1 plus the attack speed bonus, in this case 2%, or 0.02. And what we get is 0.980 seconds. Now we need to convert this amount of seconds to frames. To do this, we perform the next calculation being time in seconds for attack divided by 0.01666. This 0.01666 value is what we have already established as the amount of time that is allotted to a single frame based on Diablo 4's 60 frame per second server tick rate. The value we get from this calculation is 58.82. This value is the number of frames it would take to render the skill with a base attack speed of 1 being buffed by 2% bonus attack speed. Here's the problem. Diablo 4 cannot render the decimal values of frames. In this case, the 0.82 and 58.82 cannot be used because the server tick rate functions off of whole numbers. We cannot use any decimals, meaning it will be rounded to either 58 or 59. The rule in Diablo 4 is that it will always be rounded up, and therefore in this scenario, 2% bonus attack speed will reduce the frames needed to render the skill from 60 frames to 59 frames. This is the frame rounding rule. So with this knowledge, we are going to play a little game. Let's look at 114% bonus attack speed. The calculation states that the amount of frames it takes to render this skill is 28.04. My question to you is this: will this skill render at 28 frames or 29 frames? Well, remember, the rule is that it will always be rounded up. Therefore, even though it is 0.04 seconds off from 28 frames, it will still be rendered at 29 frames. In order for this skill to be rendered at 28 frames, we have to hit exactly 28 frames. Any amount above, no matter how small the decimal, will be rounded to 29 frames. So in this scenario, how much attack speed do we need? Well, let's math. From the following calculations, we get that we need 114.4% attack speed on our character stat sheet to meet the requirement for 28 frames. This 114.4% is known as an attack speed breakpoint, as it allows us to finally bypass 29 frames to 28 frames needed to render the skill. I know this may be rough, I'm trying here, stay with me. We know what the frame rounding rule is and how it pertains to attack speed breakpoints. Now we are going to look back at this chart and input the frame rounding rule to show the whole number of frames needed at specific attack speeds, and it looks something like this. On the left side of the chart, you will see yellow BPs. These are breakpoints that move us into the lower amount of frames needed to render the skill. Now this chart is not exact because we know that the 29 to 28 frame breakpoint is not 116%. It is actually 114.4% as we just calculated out, but I'm just trying to convey a concept here. What I want us to focus on in this chart is look at the beginning of the chart versus the end of the chart. Specifically, look at the amount of attack speed needed to go from 60 frames to 59 frames, and then the attack speed needed to go from 21 frames to 20 frames. As we can see, we only need 2% attack speed bonus to go from 60 frames to 59 frames, but we need 14% more attack speed to go from 21 frames to 20 frames. This is because attack speed in tandem with attack speed breakpoints does function off of a form of diminishing returns, and therefore becomes less valuable the more you invest into attack speed in terms of reducing the frames needed to render a skill. Now what happens if we have a weapon that isn't 1 attack per second? What if it states it has 1.1 attacks per second? Well, we can still run all the same equations. The only value that changes is our base time for 1 attack value, which in this case is 1 divided by base weapon attack speed, or 0.9090. We can use all the same equations with this new base value, and we get a chart looking like this. This chart doesn't function any differently, but what's different now is the lowest value frames we can achieve being 19 frames versus the 20 frames with a weapon of 1 attack per second as seen here. This is the base concept of attack speed breakpoints. The concept is that you can have these pockets of gained attack speed in your gear that actually do nothing for your damage gain because you haven't bypassed a certain attack speed mark needed to render the skill at a lower amount of frames. If you understand this concept, honestly you can click to the practical application of this knowledge section in the video, because now we are about to enter Looney Tunes land where everyone's minds are about to become fine cooked spaghetti. If you are curious and want to continue, then take a quick 5-minute break and let's get to it. Alright, well, welcome to Looney Tunes land as we delve deeper into what is happening with attack speed breakpoints. So the first question I want to ask is this. If you have a weapon with 1.2 attacks per second, which renders any attack at 50 frames with 0 bonus attack speed, does this mean every skill is rendered at that 50 frame mark? And against all common sense, the answer to this question is no. So here we have a chart of some of the sort classes skills and the attack speed breakpoints tied to them, courtesy of Gold Farming Guide. Shout out to you, good sir, you are a god among men. In this chart, we can see how many frames it takes to render each skill with 1.2 attacks per second weapon at no bonus attack speed. And do you notice anything weird here? Well, first, none of the skills are being rendered at the base value of 50 frames, which is what a 1.2 attacks per second weapon calculates at. The second issue, the bigger one in my opinion, is that each skill is being rendered at a different amount of frames. With 0 bonus attack speed, Arc Lash and Fireball are being rendered at 34 frames. Chain Lightning is being rendered at 40 frames, Charge Bolt is being rendered at 36 frames, and Frozen Orb is being rendered at 42 frames. What does this mean? Well, our best guess is that each skill is actually getting some unique coefficient multiplier that is giving a pseudo amount of bonus attack speed to that skill. Now, I said every skill is rendering at a different amount of frames, and you're sitting here looking at Arc Lash and Fireball going, Otter, I may not be the best at math, but I definitely know how to read, and those two skills are the same. Yes, you are correct. But at the same time, you're not entirely correct, because now what I want to show you is what happens as we start adding attack speed into our builds. So here's the next part of the chart showing more bonus attack speed, and what I want to focus on first is the 20 frame breakpoint. And now, do you notice anything awkward about the attack speeds needed to achieve that 20 frame breakpoint? Yeah, they're all different. That's weird. Okay, well this sort of makes sense because they all started at different frames at 0% bonus attack speed, except Fireball and Arc Lash, remember? They both started at 34 frames, but now need different attack speeds needed to hit 20 frames? Yeah, Buckle-Up-Buckaroos, this gets weirder. Now what I want you to look at is Chain Lightning and Frozen Orb at 30 frames. To achieve 30 frames for Chain Lightning, we need 40% attack speed. And for Frozen Orb at 30 frames, we need 45% attack speed. So we need more attack speed for Frozen Orb than Chain Lightning to achieve 30 frames. Okay, well this sort of makes sense because Frozen Orb started at 42 frames at 0% attack speed, and Chain Lightning started at 40 frames at 0% attack speed. Now what I want you to look at is 20 frames. For Chain Lightning we need 114.6% attack speed, and for Frozen Orb we only need 113% attack speed. So now we need less attack speed for Frozen Orb to hit 20 frames than Chain Lightning, but we needed more attack speed for Frozen Orb than Chain Lightning for 30 frames? Huh? Alright, Jeopardy contestants, the wagers are in and the category is Spaghetti Code. Here's your question. Why do different skills have different base frames at 0% attack speed? And how does one skill that has a higher number of base frames needed to render than another skill eventually need less attack speed to render a lower number of frames than that other same skill? 30 seconds, players. Good luck. Okay, I've had my fun. And after consulting many smart people in the community, the real answer we have all come to is... That's the honest truth. We really have no idea what is happening. The best guess we have is that each skill has a bonus coefficient to a base amount of attack speed you have, but that bonus attack speed coefficient changes as you gain more attack speed due to it being modified by an inverse exponential function. And when you combine all of that nonsense, we get an equation looking like this. And this is our best guess as to what is happening. So essentially what happened is Blizzard hired intern Jerry from MIT and asked him to make this equation as difficult as possible to figure out, while at the same time preventing players from being able to attack 10 times a second with any skill. And because each skill has its own unique variable, by which attack speed is modifying the frames needed to render the skill, this means the only way we can figure out the breakpoints is by manually testing them in-game. We have to literally increase our attack speed by little increments, percent by percent, and then rewatch the footage and count the literal frames the skill is being rendered at to figure out what the breakpoints are. Now after some years, the Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 community did figure out every single skill, and I have no doubt that in time, the Diablo 4 community will figure this out as well. But for the time being, we are at the mercy of those who have the time and the brains to figure this out so we know exactly how much attack speed we need without having wasted attack speed on our toon. Now we are going to talk about the practical application of this knowledge and what it means for our damage output. Essentially, there are two ways to increase our DPS. We can increase the actual damage of our ability, or we can increase the rate at which the damage is dealt. By combining both concepts, we can maximize our DPS and send it to the moon. The concept of increasing the rate at which the damage is dealt is exactly what attack speed breakpoints are doing. And for this video, we will use Quill Volley's attack speed breakpoints as it is the most used build for pit pushes this season. As we can see here, we have 3 breakpoints for Quill Volley. We have 123.8% attack speed for 13 frames, 140.3% attack speed for 12 frames, and 163.8% attack speed for 11 frames. So what do these breakpoints do for our damage? The mechanic we are trying to get the most out of is the Jaguar primary haul. Essentially, we are trying to get off as many attacks within the 0.5 second period to have the Jaguar primary haul do giga damage. If we look at the following chart, we can see that at 13 frames, we follow a pattern of attacks within the 0.5 second window, being 2 attacks, 2 attacks, and 3 attacks repeating. This gives us an average of 2.33 attacks over time within that 0.5 second period. This also explains why the damage we deal feels so random at times, because sometimes it will be for 100 trillion, and another time it'll be 150 trillion. Well, this is because in one of those 0.5 second windows, you got off 3 attacks rather than 2 attacks, which is an increase of 50% multiplicative damage output. To be clear, after thorough testing, we can confidently say the Jaguar main haul is not double dipping on itself, meaning the damage the Jaguar main echo deals does not count towards the damage within the 0.5 seconds for it to calculate the next echo damage. It cannot interact with itself. At 12 frames, we have a 2 attacks and then 3 attacks pattern repeating, meaning we have an average of 2.5 attacks within the 0.5 second window. And finally, at the best breakpoint of 11 frames, we have a 3 attacks, 3 attacks, 3 attacks, 2 attacks pattern, meaning we have an average of 2.75 attacks within the 0.5 second window. This is a dramatic damage increase, which is why all the big boys are trying to accomplish this. The way that you accomplish this is with the following gear and aspect rolls on your character. You need to have 96% attack speed on your character stat sheet and then 14 stacks of ferocity. That's all I have for you today. I hope that though this is a relatively advanced topic within the realm of Diablo 4's min-maxing, that you were able to grab good information and empowers you to know how and where to go to maximize your toon's damage potential. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and help me hit 1,000 likes for the algorithm. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments or drop by in my Discord or stream and ask me there. Links in the description below. Planners for different Quill Volley variants are also in the description. Have a wonderful day, ladies and gents. I'll see you in the next one.